Hey guys, what's up? It's Monkazunky and welcome to a new video. So in this video we're going to be going over a Google Parsec suggestion, which is an awesome one in checking out some of the Easter eggs or cultural references that are in Runescape. Now this was a suggestion for a top 10, however there's way too many awesome ones to just make a video about 10 of them, so we're going to be doing 25. Keep in mind that there's a lot of references and Easter eggs in this video that I can't include because, for one, there's way too many, and for two, a lot of them are in quests and you cannot access them after the quest is complete, and I've done almost all of the quests. But keep in mind that there are a lot of Easter eggs and references that you might pick up while doing a lot of the quests in-game. Also for this video, I want to play a game. After the video is over, leave down in the comments how many of the Easter eggs and references you knew in this video existed, and also list your favorite one, whether it's one that I covered in this video or one that was left out or in a quest that I can't have access to. So with that being said, let's start going over a lot of the Easter eggs that are in RuneScape. There are a lot of references to the movie Monty Python and the Holy Grail in RuneScape. Firstly, if you use a herring on a tree, it will say this is not the mightiest tree in the forest, a reference to the knights who say ni. Also, on the islands of Yadazo and Niedidsnot, there is a shouting match between the guards, and they will reference the shouting match between the Frenchmen and the heroes in the movie Monty Python and the Holy Grail when he says, "Your mother is a hamster and your father smells like elderberries." Also, if you examine Lumberjack Leaf on Miscellanea, it will say he's a lumberjack and he's okay, lyrics to a song from the movie. And finally, there's an injured warrior in the duel arena, and if you talk to him, he will sometimes say the line of dialogue, "It's just a flesh wound." Probably one of the most famous lines from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. One of the more commonly known Easter eggs in the game, if you summon a war tortoise pouch and then examine it, it will say definitely not teenaged, although the jury is out on its ninja skills, reference to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie, as well as the old TV show. If you examine the bookcase in the very northeast corner of the Varrock library, there are quite a few books in that bookcase that sound very similar to some famous books that exist in the real world, and some of the titles are pretty funny as well. Number 4, unfortunately I can't show myself as I have completed the Mauritania task. However, if you talk to the mysterious ghost with a ring of visibility equipped and without an amulet of ghost speak, sometimes your character will say all your base are belong to us, but if you complete the Mauritania task, your character acts like he's always wearing an amulet of ghost speak, so you have to talk to this guy before you do the task if you want to see the Easter egg. The next one is Brian O'Richard, who is the guy that you start Flash Powder Factory with. He stays in the Rogue's Den, and he is referenced to Richard O'Brien, who is the writer of the famous musical Rocky Horror Show and also hosted the game show Crystal Maze. Number 6 is our first major song reference. If you go to Death's office and examine the door behind him, the examined text is a reference to the song Knockin' on Heaven's Door by Bob Dylan, and later covered and made more famous by Guns N' Roses as well. Number 7 is probably the most well-known Easter egg in the game because, unfortunately, it's related to the Daemonheim task, but if you use the Ring of Kinship on a fire, the text that you get is a reference to Lord of the Rings. The next one is another song reference. If you either trade and pick up sticks and click on info on one of the feather headdresses, or examine one in your inventory, what it says is a reference to the song YMCA by the Village People, except with way more letters in it. If you examine one of the coffins in Edgeville, it will say "I see dead people," which is from the movie Sixth Sense. Number 10 works on both the piglets in Draenor Village and also the mini moles in the giant mole lair, and their examined text is a reference to Dr. Evil's Mini-Me from the Austin Powers series. The giant clock on Catherby Bank is always stuck at 10:04, which is a reference to Back to the Future when lightning strikes the clock tower, and the clock tower is always stuck at the time 10:04. There are a couple Easter eggs in the Brimhaven Agility Arena. The first one, if you examine one of the pillars that you jump on, the text that you get is an obvious reference to what Neil Armstrong said when he first landed on the moon. And also, when your character is dodging some of the dart traps, the animation looks really similar to dodging bullets in the Matrix movies. If you summon a Cthulhu Overlord pouch and then examine it, the text is a reference to Kneel Before Zod from the movie Superman 2, except it's Kneel Before Squid in this case. There are 2 Doctor Who references in game. The first one, if you knock at the door from Varrock Bank, there's quite a few funny responses that you can give to the banker, but if you say Doctor, she'll say Doctor and then stop herself from saying Doctor Who because that's a really old joke. And then also if you go to Berg de Rot, there's 2 kids there named Amelia and Rory, who are obviously from the later renditions of the TV show. All of the Temple Knights in game have names that are actually play on words, and it's fun to go around and find all the Temple Knights and decide what their names are supposed to be. So some of the more famous ones are Certification, who's the guy that you start a lot of the quests with. His name is supposed to mean certification, and also Surveillance is surveillance. Misinterpret is obviously misinterpret, and there's plenty more that you can find as well. The Notepad in-game houses a ton of Easter eggs that you can type in and get pretty funny responses. For example, if you type in Andrew, the Notepad's response won't be Andrew, but it will be cabbage. Or you can type in "Oh really?" and the response will be Yarly. You can type in "I'll be back" and it references the Terminator movies. You can type in "I am your father" and it references Star Wars. You can type in "All your base are belong to us" for a second reference of that meme, and there's quite a few others that you can discover as well. There's a lot of really awesome things that you can type into the Notepad and get some pretty awesome responses in return. This next one is a really awesome Star Wars reference. If you build an oubliette in your play-around house, which is the room that enemies will drop into if you send them down the trapdoor in your throne room, you can build a Rocknar to guard the room, which is Rancor spelled backwards and a reference to the Rancor scene from Return of the Jedi. Continuing with our short George Lucas theme, there's a couple Indiana Jones references in game. First of all is Professor Henry, who looks suspiciously like Henry Jones, aka Sean Connery, from The Lost Crusade, and also if you examine his satchel, there's a cup in there, probably the Holy Grail. Additionally, you can go to Pyramid Plunder, and examining the Grand Gold Chest both when unopened and opened are both references to Raiders of the Lost Ark when there was ghosts inside the chest when they opened it at the end of the movie. Number 19 isn't nearly as much of a direct reference as most of these are, but I think it's one of the most awesome ones in the game. You can talk to Ezekiel Lovecraft, which is a reference to Howard Lovecraft, the famous horror novelist, and also the entire town of Witchhaven and all the quests associated with it are all strong examples of Lovecraftian horror, which is the genre of horror made famous by Howard Lovecraft, where you have a small creepy town, a lot of mystery and intrigue surrounding it, fear of the unknown, and then you eventually find out there's sea slugs inhabiting people's minds and controlling them. The entire town and quest series is really a tribute to this style of horror, more than a reference, but it's still really awesome and probably my personal favorite in game. All 4 floors of the Stronghold of Security in Barbarian Village are referenced to the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and if you aren't convinced just with their theme alone, the gifts that you find at the end of each floor are a direct polar opposite to the 4 Horsemen, where you have the Gift of Peace, the opposite of War, the Grain of Plenty, the opposite of Famine, the Box of Health is the opposite of Pestilence, and finally the Cradle of Life is the opposite of Death. Next up is maybe not so much a cultural reference, but definitely a reference to an old saying. If you explore a haystack or a hay bale enough times, you can find a needle and your character will say, "Wow, what are the chances of finding that?" If you go to the Tazar City and into the Fight Cauldron, after completing the Brink of Extinction quest and examine a valve, it will say, "It releases when it's ready," maybe a slight burn towards the game's company Valve. One of my personal favorites is if you go to the Asgardian Ice Dungeon and have 85 Dungeoneering and have a bucket of milk along with you for some reason, you can use a bucket of milk on a Frost Dragon and the game will quote Tony the Tiger in your chat bar. Number 24 is the mod Timbo tree, and this is probably another of the more famous ones in the game, but you can examine the tree pre and post cutting it down and it will give weird inside jokes towards mod Timbo. And for number 25, the last Easter egg that I have for you guys here, if you talk to the Varrock Bartender, who is in the bar when you just enter the city coming from the Lodestone, he seems to be the only person in all of RuneScape that really knows what's going on, as he's fully aware that RuneScape is a computer game, even though your character is completely clueless to what a computer game is. Although there's way too many songs to make a full Easter egg, I decided to include as a slight bonus. A lot of the songs in-game are references to songs or general things in real life. For example, the song Bubble and Squeak, or the song Cage Against the Machine, obviously a reference to the band Rage Against the Machine. Now there's a ton of these songs and it would take way too long to list them all, but feel free to examine some of them yourself. Also, if you play the song Norse Code, the opening lines to the song are actually the word RuneScape in Morse code. Alright guys, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to leave down in the comments how many of these you already knew, and also, what was your favorite out of all the Easter eggs, either in this video or otherwise. I gotta say, even as a player who has played for coming up on 8 or 9 years now, I only knew maybe 5 or 6 of these personally, and it was really fun going around the game, exploring the Easter eggs, and also looking up what all of these were online. There's a lot of really cool hidden stuff, even in quests, so make sure when you are doing quests, if you have many more quests that you have left to do to get your completionist capes, keep your eye out for Easter eggs because there's lots of those in a lot of the quests in game as well. But I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Farewell.